hold further protests nationwide after more than a dozen people were injured and 2 arrested during last night's 9-hour demonstration in the capital that included violent confrontations with the police. Several hundred demonstrators took to the streets, blocking traffic and the light rail system in the city in a rally against what they proclaimed to be racism and violence toward their community, particularly by law enforcement officers. The protest began in the afternoon and took a violent turn when security forces prevented marchers from approaching the Prime Minister's residence. 3 officers were injured when rocks and bottles were thrown by the demonstrators. In attempts to disperse the crowds, police used tear gas, stun grenades, and water hoses. Even though Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat received praise for rushing to the scene, his appeal for calm was largely unsuccessful. The demonstration shifted toward the entrance of the city, and there were sporadic outbursts of violence until around 1 a.m. this morning. There has been widespread anger not only in the Israeli-Ethiopian community, but throughout the entire country when a video emerged this week capturing an unprovoked police beating in Cologne of an Ethiopian-born IDF soldier who has been identified as Damas Bakada. The 21-year-old orphan emigrated from Ethiopia with his 4 siblings 7 years ago. Bakada was arrested after his assailants said that he attacked them, and he was released only after the video proved their claims to be untrue. The main perpetrator is a police officer who was immediately suspended and expected to be fired after an investigation, while the volunteer who assisted him in the attack has been released. Members of the country's Ethiopian community say that this incident is sadly indicative of what they face on a regular basis.
We have demonstrated against the police brutality. The police is acting with force, with unproportionate force against Israeli Ethiopian civilians. There is many cases that Ethiopian civilians, Israeli Ethiopian civilians, who are get attacked by the police. Get beaten by the...
Turning to Nepal, where the search continued today to locate the whereabouts of the last Israeli tourist, or Asraf, who has not made contact since the devastating earthquake hit the Asian country on Saturday. Rescue teams are also trying to evacuate the remaining 15 Israeli hikers who have been stranded in the remote area of Langtang. More than 100 Israeli hikers have so far been rescued in recent days. And meanwhile, the Israeli-led rescue team extricated a live Nepalese woman out of rubble of a Kathmandu hotel where she was employed. Members of the Israeli Isra Aid group worked into the night alongside Nepalese soldiers and an international team from France and Norway to pull her to safety, after which she was brought to the IDF field hospital for care.
There was another body above her that kind of blocked the walls and the rocks from collapsing and also created some kind of air pocket that enabled her to breathe and to survive for more than 130 hours without drinks, without food.
Her situation right now is quite serious. She came in and was conscious and was able to speak, but we did see that she was having trouble breathing. So she was intubated, and now really the main focus is to deal with a serious chest injury that she has.
This was the second such rescue operation within just 1 day, following the saving of a 15-year-old boy who was discovered in the debris of another hotel just streets away, who was also treated at Israel's field hospital.
He was quite well. Surprisingly, he was quite well. Very communicated, talked to us. Being 5 days without food and without water, it was amazing the way he will survive.
Turning now to coalition talks, and even though Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has successfully anchored the first 2 partners for his next government, so far it appears his efforts are failing to persuade other potential factions to make necessary compromises. While the Likud negotiating team met with Habayit Yehudi at the Knesset last night, Netanyahu held discussions at his office with Shas leader Aryeh Deri, with neither of the prospective coalition parties relinquishing their demands for the religious services portfolio. Deri is reported to have even refused the possibility that a Habayit Yehudi member be appointed his deputy at the ministry. In addition to the economy and religious services portfolios, Deri also requested a third one, including either welfare or development of the Negev and Galilee. Netanyahu has refused those demands, saying that he has to keep them for ministers within his own Likud party. And meanwhile, IBA leader Naftali Bennett is insisting on greater funds to improve the system in his expected role as the next Minister of Education. That move would cost around 1 billion shekels and has yet to be agreed upon. Netanyahu has until 8 p.m. Wednesday night to inform President Reuven Rivlin that he has formed a government. Chairman of the Joint Arab List, Ayman Odeh, made a personal visit to convicted Palestinian murderer Marwan Barghouti in prison, later comparing the former leader of the Tanzim terror faction with South African President Nelson Mandela, who he said was also accused by the ruling regime of being a terrorist. Barghouti is currently serving 5 life sentences for his role in masterminding suicide attacks as the alleged primary architect of the first and second intifadas. Odeh described his meeting with the 55-year-old Fatah member as exciting and said that he enjoyed the opportunity to discuss politics. In a posting on his Facebook page, Odeh wrote that the time will come when we, together with Marwan, will walk the streets of ancient Jerusalem once it's been liberated from the occupation. U.S. naval ships will now begin to escort all American commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz to ensure their safe passage without interference from Iran. Defense officials in Washington say that the new policy has been implemented in response to Tehran's provocative behavior following this week's seizure of a Marshall Islands-flagged cargo ship by a Revolutionary Guard naval patrol, which fired warning shots across the bridge of the Maersk Tiger ship before detaining it and the crew over an alleged business dispute. The narrow strategic strait is located at the mouth of the Persian Gulf and is partially within Iranian territorial waters, but an internationally recognized protocol known as the Innocent Passage guarantees maritime traffic through Hormuz without obstruction, so long as ships don't violate restrictions such as the transportation of weapons or collecting of intelligence. In other news, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has lost all legitimacy and must now be replaced with a transitional government. That's the reiterated message from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry during his meetings in Washington with the head of Syria's main opposition group, Khaled Hoxha, in discussions about the civil war that has now been raging for more than 4 years.
The situation on the ground in Syria and in the communities around it is simply unsustainable, catastrophic. It has a profound impact, negative, on each of the surrounding communities, particularly Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan, but especially on the people of Syria. 3/4 of the population of Syria is now displaced people. This is a regime that has lost all sense of any kind of responsibility to its own people, and that is why there must be a transition from the Assad regime towards a government that represents all of the people and can repair this extraordinary damage to Syria, unite the country, protect all minorities, and provide a legitimate future. The other part of the problem is that as Assad is busy destroying the country in his own interests, he is enabling and attracting terrorists to the country who are having a further negative impact on the region. That's why he has lost all legitimacy with respect to his ability to be able to be a part of the long-term future of the country.
70 years after the end of the Second World War, the German city of Munich has inaugurated a center documenting atrocities committed by the Third Reich. The new facility was built on the Bavarian site where National Socialist Party headquarters once stood in what was considered to be the capital of Nazism. German officials attending the event included Munich's mayor, Dieter Reiter, and the head of Munich's Jewish community, Charlotte Knoblauch. Dieter said that the main purpose of the center is to inform visitors how the Nazi regime could have taken hold in a civil society to help humanity learn from history and prevent a repetition of the horrors of the Third Reich's legacy. The Agritech exhibition takes place every 3 years, attracting literally tens of thousands of visitors interested in the latest Israeli innovations designed to help feed the world. Members of a delegation from the American city of St. Louis told IBA's Aria O'Sullivan and Dennis Zinn that they believe that food security can only be established through collaboration between countries.
If we aspire to feed the world, in the next 35 years, we're going to have to figure out a way to make as much food as the last 8,000 years combined to today combined. That's not easy, and we have to do it with less resources and less inputs. The only way to do that is if we learn to share ideas, collaborate, scientists to businessmen, businessmen to NGOs, governments, across borders as well. So things like this are vital. We're not going to get there if we don't do more of this. So this is a perfect place.
Israelis are known for being innovative and high-tech and also in agriculture. What is your message here? How can Israel play a part in this food security of the world?
Well, first of all, like I said, I have never seen such a repository of energy, a culture of we're going to take a risk, and if we fail, it's okay. It's part of the equation. And that's one of the things that even places like the United States, we have to learn to be more like you and say, let's celebrate losses as well as successes because it's part of the process. But this view of the world, the lens that folks wear to say, I've spent time on a farm, I've spent time in a lab, I see the pain point, and that is that the pests need to be detected, and so let's take this technology and let's get it out of the lab and turn it into a company, and eventually the way that we make the world better is if it's part of a product or service that a farmer, a villager in Africa uses, so when she's out tending to her crops, increasing production. So it's been incredible.
How does St. Louis play a part in all this?
Well, St. Louis is probably the leading place in the world for ag tech. We have more plant PhDs in St. Louis than anywhere else in the world, over 750. The institute that I work at, the Danforth Plant Science Center, it's only been around 15 years. It's already the largest independent research institute in the world focused on plants. We have scientists from 27 countries. We have projects in the developed world and in the developing world. For example, we do a lot of work in sub-Saharan Africa with the Gates Foundation funding. We have industry, and within 150, 200 miles of the desk I sit at every day at work, about 70% of the U.S. agriculture production happens. So we're in the epicenter of ag industry, ag production, and we're close to farmers and consumers.
Accessing the U.S. market is very difficult. Taking the company to the next stage is difficult if they don't have the right relationships, the right access to customers, the capital, and really the way to bring and do business in the United States. It's very different from one country to another, and the U.S. is a very big market. And if you are from a new country, it's very difficult to do that. So in St. Louis, we have a full support network and infrastructure of university relationships, companies. We bring relationships from companies like Monsanto, KWS, DuPont, Nestle. These are the companies we have there. They're connected to all the markets that these companies are interested in, and we can help with that.
What sort of examples can you give of Israeli companies you're looking for? The irrigation companies, the seed companies?
Right. So in the agriculture area, we're looking for any company that can improve the farmer's business in the U.S. So seed companies or technologies that can improve seed company, making better seeds. These days, we're using a lot of precision agriculture, using technology to make agriculture very much more like an information systems business. So precision agriculture, drones and robots that can help collect a lot of data, analyze the data. We're looking for biologicals. Instead of just modifying the seed, you can treat the seed, and that can improve productivity. So anything that can improve the productivity of agriculture is of interest. We also have a very vibrant financial services sector in St. Louis. So fintech companies that can develop better payment systems, better information systems to manage money, cybersecurity of great interest. Boeing has its defense headquarters in St. Louis, so anything in the area of defense technologies is of great interest. And then we have a very vibrant medical technology, hospital systems, so health IT, devices and diagnostics. And these are all areas where Israel is very strong. So the matchup between Israel and St. Louis is excellent.
You know, Israel has been, there are people around the world, especially in America, calling for the boycott of Israel. Is that putting pressure on companies like you to bring Israelis?
So we don't hear anything about the boycott of Israel because we are here to create win-win relationships between the phenomenal innovation that's taking place in Israel and the great markets that are available in the U.S. where the best opportunities for technologies win. The United States doesn't care where the technology comes from. If it's a great technology, it needs to get to the market. And in St. Louis, we work very collaboratively. One thing that makes St. Louis so special is that we all work just like the Israelis who are very collaborative. People in St. Louis are all...
Former Yesh Atid member of Knesset, Rabbi Dov Lipman, wasn't re-elected to the 20th Knesset, but that does not mean that he's unemployed. Beside his recent appointment as the party's liaison to the English-speaking community, the native of Silver Spring, Maryland, has also been named director of both the Government and International Affairs section of the Lone Soldier Center in memory of Michael Levin, as well as for the families of the Lone Soldiers organization, which includes efforts to represent their interests at the Knesset and the Ministry of Defense. We hear more in this interview with IBA's Eli Wogelenter.
During the course of my term in the Knesset, I came across two remarkable organizations. One is the Lone Soldier Center, named for Michael Levin, a lone soldier who was killed in Lebanon, a center that provides lone soldiers with so much of their needs before they serve, while they serve, afterwards. My role is going to be to help on the government legislative side. There's a lot of policy changes that we're seeking from the Knesset and the Defense Ministry to help lone soldiers during the process and after they finish their service. So it's going to be a great honor for me to help them. There's also the families of lone soldiers who are looking for a better relationship between the Army and the families who live overseas for these soldiers, and to try to also change some policies to improve that relationship.
Are you saying that the IDF does not have any contact with the families who are living outside of Israel, who have sons and daughters who are serving here in the Army?
It may be hard for your viewers to hear these words, but for parents, the contact they get from the Army comes when there's a knock on the door, unfortunately, with bad news, and there's no contact beforehand. And our goal is to make sure that there be a significant contact, recognition of the sacrifice the families are making in having their children go overseas and serve.
What are some of the core issues that are facing lone soldiers who are serving the IDF?
The first step is definitely preparation for their service, and there are various programs that exist, but we want to improve it and make sure that we as a government are really providing them in terms of language and culture and just really understanding what they're getting themselves into while they're serving. Certainly lone soldiers, the term lone soldiers is there for a purpose, while everyone else goes home to their families and has their mother and father taking care of them, both in terms of food and laundry and whatever needs they have, equipment needs in the Army, and just showing them that love. Here you have young men and women who are without that embrace, and the Lone Soldier Center really provides them with that embrace, and we want to step it up another notch through the center to make sure that they're really getting every single thing they need so that it could be as close to home as possible. And then after serving, you finish serving, you're in a country here by yourself in terms of finding employment, in terms of your next steps, to make sure that there's real infrastructure in place to help them with that next step. Certainly from my perspective, a next step hopefully which means staying in Israel and contributing to the state of Israel.
And numbers, what are we talking about? How many lone soldiers are there serving in the IDF now?
There are 6,000 lone soldiers, 44% of those actually not from overseas, but young men and women who come from ultra-Orthodox backgrounds and find themselves without any infrastructure as they left their homes, and their families certainly reject them. And then the rest of them from overseas, with a breakdown of over 70 countries where they come from. And it's really been incredible as I've met with groups of lone soldiers as they were leaving the Army. We honored them in the Knesset to see from all over the world coming with such a passion and Zionism and freshness, and it's something which adds so much to the Army. I've spoken to commanders who told me that even though there might be one or two here or there, they infuse their unit with such a Zionism and desire to make this state great and strong, and that's something which we want to increase. I would love nothing more than every parent and every lone soldier to report back, this is the most fantastic experience, everything is smooth, the country wants us here, we have all the conditions that we need, and inspire many more to come.
And that attitude is reflected in the soldiers who were honored on Yom Ha'atzmaut, on Independence Day. The 120 soldiers honored, an overly represented proportion of them were lone soldiers.
If I'm not mistaken, the number was 18% of the soldiers who were honored for being excellent soldiers were lone soldiers, and it certainly shows. I think in the general Army, it's 0.04% in terms of the numbers that are serving, and here all of a sudden you have such a huge percentage. Out of the 120 that were being honored, I think it's well over 20. That shows what they bring, not just to the Army, but to the country. And we, as a country, having served in the Knesset, I can say we have to make it an imperative, really the highest level of importance, to try to inspire more and more young men and women to come to the country, to serve in the country, to stay in the country, and bring that zeal to contributing to the country.
In financial news, the shekel today ended the trading week with a mixed performance, and due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays, here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. The IBA weather team is telling us to expect another beautiful spring day tomorrow with fair skies and another slight drop in temperatures. Here's the forecast to home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, and I'll be back to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.